Let's have a little update from the Olympic Sevens then. Have you been following the shenanigans at the Stade de France? I've just watched the semi-finals. The placement matches are all still ongoing, but I thought I'd just dip back onto the channel and quickly talk about those two games that I've just watched between France and South Africa and between Australia and Fiji. And spoiler alert, you're about to find out if you don't want to know the results and who's playing in the gold medal match and the bronze medal matches, then look away. But well done to France and Fiji. Here's a question. Am I right in saying, this is the sense I get, among neutrals, this is the final everybody wanted to see, isn't it? This is the gold medal match people wanted. The reigning champions, the never before beaten at an Olympic Sevens tournament, Fiji, everyone's favourite team, everyone's favourite second team, unless you're Fijian, then of course it's your favourite team, and France, the hosts, with Antoine Dupont. And I also think that South Africa and Australia, whilst they lost their semi-final matches, they've done well to get to this stage. And I know that sounds a little bit patronising, particularly in the case of South Africa. They qualified through the repechage. They got the very last qualification spot for the Sevens, keeping GB out. And then they made it, potentially will walk away with a medal. Australia had a really tough route, won 4 games on the bounce, and then came up against the best in the business in Fiji. I'll go through the semi-finals, but I think just from a spectacle point of view, and if you can step outside of your own allegiance, this is the perfect final to try and use it as a springboard to get eyeballs on the game of rugby. Whether watching sevens actually converts people into being interested in watching 15s, that is another question altogether, and I've talked about that previously. I'm dubious about how much that is the case. It's interesting that the USA coach Mike Friday, former England and Great Britain coach Mike Friday, he's saying that this is make or break for sevens rugby. And he says that it could, with other challenges that are coming down the road, with the NFL have got a short form of the game, rugby league are getting into a short form of the game. He said this is make or break for sevens. So I don't know where you think the sport is at and how it can prosper and what role it can have. But all I'll say is this few days I've really enjoyed watching a bit of sevens. Your thoughts in the comments down below then. First semi-final. South Africa 5, France 19. Cagey as this game, wasn't it? Especially that first half. I cannot remember ever watching a game of sevens. I must have watched a game of sevens that was 0-0 at half time. But it's very, very rare, isn't it? There was a bit of rain, a bit of light drizzle. That caused some handling errors, but you felt the nerves were part of that as well. And South Africa, who had probably the best defensive display I've ever seen in sevens against New Zealand in the quarter-final, they backed their D in this one and were kicking the ball away, giving it to France. And it looked to have worked when they got a bit of territory through a kick, put the pressure on, walloped France with a massive tackle on their own line, got the scrum, but then coughed up the ball from a breakdown, and France were putting on some breakdown pressure. So it was 0-0 at half-time. So rare. Second half, things did change. Obviously, 3 tries for France, 1 for South Africa. It was South Africa that broke the deadlock. Tristan Lades scoring a try. I can talk about officiating more generally. In fact, I'll save that. Let me save that. Let me focus on the rugby. But yeah, handling errors from France gave South Africa some territory. They converted. Then, and I don't know whether it's just, I think it's probably just coincidence, but Antoine Dupont came on and France suddenly started finding holes. He is a little magician, but he is off the bench for France. It seems to be quite a good way to use him. And 3 tries, the last one of them when the game was already done. It was 14-5. Time was running out, and France just scored when South Africa were trying to get a consolation try back to make the scoreline look more respectable. But really, the game was won by that point anyway. And on the second half performance, France deserved it. South Africa did really well. Officiating briefly before I go on to the other semi-final. There's a lot of people that were complaining about what looked like a knock-on before Fiji's winning try against Ireland, which wasn't spotted. There was a few decisions in this match where I was like, it was Antoine Dupont, in fact, got penalised for a turnover. Looked perfect. If it was in the 15-a-side game, he'd have been lauded for that turnover. So maybe there's some law changes I'm unaware of, but it seemed a little bit magic 8-ball, the officiating decisions, which it went for both sides. So I guess as long as there's no bias involved, then you know what, mistakes happen. Referees aren't perfect, and it's subjective at the end of the day, isn't it? But the best team won. France are in the final, and South Africa, I think, can probably feel quite happy about being in a bronze medal match, given where they came from, qualifying through the repechage, losing opening matches in the tournament, and then pulling off a brilliant win to put out one of the favourites, New Zealand. As for the other semi-final, bit of a beatdown in the end, wasn't it? 31-7. It was like 5 minutes gone and it was 0-0 again. And there were two defences that were cancelling each other out. But then, just you cannot keep that class. Fiji were not favoured coming into this tournament. They haven't been playing particularly well. They just turn it on at the Olympics, don't they? They have never lost, what a stat, they have never lost a game of rugby at the Olympic Sevens. France will have to be the first team ever to beat them at the Olympics in order to prevent them from winning 3 gold medals in consecutive events. And Jerry Tuai, who I featured on my preview video before the Sevens started, came out of retirement. To think he's 35, came out of retirement and is playing rugby like that is unreal. Some of the steps that he puts in, he's got one of the best steps off his right foot in rugby. I think I would have blown my ACL out if I tried to do the step that Jerry Tuai did. But the offloads, the massive defensive shots, the footwork, the awareness of space, the speed, just the raw talent of Fijian Sevens players is from another dimension. And they will be favourites to win. The noise is going to be insane. That was one funny thing, actually. All tournament, Fiji have been getting an amazing reception from the French crowd, because they get a great reception wherever they go. But the French crowd suddenly realised, watching that second semi-final, oh right, the winner of this is going to play France. They suddenly were a lot quieter about Fiji than they were. I mean, Fiji are going to win 3 gold medals on the bounce, and for a small nation to perform as well as they do, that's going to be an incredible story, and the way that they play is going to be amazing. Or the host nation with the most famous French sportsman, along with Kylian Mbappe, it's Antoine Dupont, and he could make himself the face of these games and elevate his status as a rugby player to levels we didn't even think were possible, and that would be good for the sport. So this is a win-win situation. I'm going to sit back at 6:45. That'll be on the bronze medal match at 6 p.m. UK time, so that's 7 p.m. and 7:45 local time. I can just sit back and enjoy watching these as a neutral. But yeah, I'll be interested to know what you think about Sevens and how it can promote the sport of 15 aside. I watched it with my son, and he said, "Oh yeah, I've seen some clips of Sevens on TikTok." And when he said that, I thought, that's it, isn't it? Sevens is like TikTok rugby. It's very different. Yeah, Sevens is TikTok rugby. I guess there's a place for it. Whether you love that or not is down to personal taste, I guess. I'm quite enjoying the Olympic Sevens, I can tell you that much. And if you enjoy the content on the channel, I would love it if you'd hit subscribe, leave your comments down below, give the video a thumbs up.